In 2006, this was the most visited website in the entire world. Bigger than Google, bigger than Yahoo, bigger than anything. 300,000 people signed up every single day. Rupert Murdoch paid more than $500 million to own it, and the kid who built it became, quite literally, everyone's first friend on the internet. And then, it disappeared. Not slowly, not quietly. It went from the king of the internet to a punchline in about 3 years. So what happened? How do you have 100 million users and lose all of them? This is the story of the fastest fall in internet history. Here is what makes this one so wild. MySpace did not die because of bad luck. It did not die because the technology stopped working. It died because of a series of decisions so baffling that years later, the people who made them still argue about whose fault it was. There is a $580 million deal that looked genius and quietly became a trap. There is a $1 billion handshake with Google that should have saved them, and instead, it strangled them. And there is a single, brutal mistake in 2019 that erased 12 years of human memories in an afternoon, but we will get to that. By the end of this video, you will understand exactly how the biggest website on Earth became a ghost town, and why the same mistake is still killing companies today. But to understand the fall, you have to understand just how impossibly high they were flying. So let us go back to the beginning. The year is 2003. The internet is kind of boring. If you wanted a personal website, you needed to know how to code. If you wanted to talk to friends online, you were stuck in clunky chat rooms or on the very first social site, Friendster, which had one fatal flaw we will come back to. Into this world steps a company called eUniverse, a Los Angeles internet firm that, frankly, made most of its money in ways nobody wants to brag about. Pop-up ads, email marketing, the spammy underbelly of the early web. Two of their guys, a marketing executive named Chris DeWolf and a musician and entrepreneur named Tom Anderson, noticed how fast Friendster was blowing up. And they noticed something else. Friendster's website was slow, painfully slow. It buckled under its own popularity. Users would wait and wait for a page to load and slowly drift away. DeWolf and Anderson took notes. So they made a BET. What if they built the same thing, but they let people make it theirs? In August 2003, MySpace went live. And the killer feature wasn't a feature at all. It was a mistake they decided not to fix. See, MySpace lets you customize your profile page with code. Originally, that was just allowed. Users figured out you could paste in HTML and CSS to change your background, your colors, your fonts. The MySpace team could have shut that down. They could have locked the profiles into neat, identical little boxes. Instead, they leaned in, and that one decision changed everything. Suddenly, your profile wasn't a form you filled out. It was a room you decorated. It was your bedroom wall, your mixtape, your identity, all in one. Teenagers spent hours tweaking their pages. They taught themselves to code just to make their profile cooler than their friends. An entire generation learned the basics of web design without ever realizing they were learning anything, all because they wanted a sparkly cursor and a song that played the second you landed on their page. And then there was the top 8. MySpace let you rank your friends, pick your 8 closest, and display them right at the top of your profile for everyone to see. It sounds tiny. It was not tiny. The top 8 started real friendships and ended them. Getting bumped off someone's top 8 was a genuine social event. Being someone's number 1 meant something. MySpace had accidentally turned friendship itself into a public leaderboard, and people were obsessed. And then came the masterstroke: music. MySpace let bands upload their songs and build a fan base directly. Unsigned artists became famous overnight. Picture it, a band with no label, no money, no radio play, suddenly reaching tens of thousands of fans from a laptop. The Arctic Monkeys built one of the most devoted early fan bases on the planet through MySpace before they'd even released an album, and then debuted at #1. Lily Allen went from posting demos on her page to a record deal and global stardom. Owl City, Colby Kylat, Sean Kingston, careers launched from a MySpace page. The platform became the beating heart of music culture. Record labels stopped scouting clubs and started scouting MySpace play counts. If you were in a band and you weren't on MySpace, you basically didn't exist. For a few years, MySpace wasn't just where music lived online. It was where music was discovered, period. And tying it all together was Tom. When you signed up, you automatically had one friend already, Tom Anderson, the co-founder. That photo, the guy smiling over his shoulder in a white t-shirt, became one of the most seen images on the internet. For millions of people, Tom was their first ever online friend. He felt like a real person, not a corporation. He'd even answer support questions himself in the early days. It was friendly. It was personal. It felt like yours. And it was about to become the most valuable property on the internet, which is exactly when the trouble started. By 2005, MySpace was a phenomenon. Tens of millions of users. Growth that looked less like a chart and more like a wall. And when something grows that fast, the sharks show up. The biggest shark of them all, Rupert Murdoch. Murdoch's media empire, News Corporation, had largely missed the internet. And Murdoch did not want to miss the next big thing. So in July 2005, News Corp bought MySpace's parent company for $580 million. At the time, people thought Murdoch overpaid. $500 million for a website teenagers used to post selfies? He looked like a genius almost immediately, because MySpace kept climbing. In 2006, it passed Google to become the most visited website in the United States. Let me say that again, because it's hard to believe now. There was a moment when more Americans went to MySpace than went to Google. And then came the deal that was supposed to make them untouchable. In 2006, Google signed a massive advertising deal to power search and ads across MySpace, a deal reportedly worth $900 million over several years. $900 million, guaranteed. It was one of the biggest deals of the early internet, and on paper, it was a triumph. On paper, because buried in that deal was a number. To earn that money, MySpace had to hit specific traffic and revenue targets. They had to keep growing. They had to keep cramming more ads in front of more users. And that single condition is the thread that, when you pull it, unravels the whole company. Remember it. Because while MySpace was celebrating, two completely different threats were forming at the exact same time. One was a tiny website started by a college kid. The other was hiding inside MySpace's own offices. Let's start with the college kid, because you already know his name. In 2004, while MySpace was busy becoming a giant, a website called The Facebook launched at Harvard. At first, nobody at MySpace was worried. Facebook was tiny. It was college only. It looked boring, plain blue and white. No glitter, no music, no customization. Next to a MySpace profile, a Facebook page looked like a tax form. But that boring design was a weapon. Here's the thing MySpace never understood. All that customization, the freedom that made MySpace, had a dark side. Profiles became cluttered, chaotic, slow to load. People pasted in code that broke pages. Worse, they pasted in code that was malicious. MySpace became a playground for spam, scams, and malware. Fake profiles flooded the site. Bots, bands spamming friend requests, sketchy ads promising you a free iPod if you just clicked right here. MySpace felt like a city with no police. Facebook felt like the opposite, Clean, fast, real names. You had to use your actual identity, which meant the scammers and the bots had nowhere to hide. There were no autoplay songs assaulting your ears, no seizure-inducing backgrounds. And then, Facebook introduced the feature that ended the war before MySpace even realized it was fighting one: the newsfeed. Instead of clicking through profiles one by one, the newsfeed brought the updates to you. Everything your friends did in one stream. It was effortless. It was addictive. It was the future. And MySpace's answer to it was nothing. For a long, fatal stretch, nothing. Why? That brings us to the threat inside the building. Remember Rupert Murdoch's $580 million purchase? Here's where the trap snaps shut. When News Corp bought MySpace, MySpace stopped being a nimble startup and became a division of a giant media conglomerate. And media conglomerates care about one thing above all: hitting quarterly revenue numbers. Remember that Google deal? The one with the traffic and revenue targets? Now MySpace had to hit them. That meant the pressure from the top was not to build the best product. It was to make more money, this quarter, no matter what. So they jammed in more ads. The site got slower, uglier, and spammier at the exact moment Facebook was getting cleaner and faster. They were actively making the product worse to hit a financial target. They were, in a very real sense, paid to ruin themselves. And it gets worse. Inside the company, the culture had calcified. Engineers described an organization drowning in bureaucracy and politics. MySpace tried to build everything in-house, every feature from scratch, which made them painfully slow. While Facebook shipped new features in weeks, MySpace took months, sometimes longer, fighting through layers of corporate approval for changes that should have taken days. There is a stat that sums it all up. By some accounts, MySpace had hundreds of engineers struggling just to keep the aging site running, while early Facebook ran circles around them with a fraction of the team. MySpace wasn't being outspent. It was being outbuilt. And the users felt it. The site they loved had become a cluttered, laggy, scam-filled mess. Their friends were drifting to this clean, new place where you used your real name and saw real updates. One by one, then by the millions, people just stopped logging in. The crossover came faster than anyone expected. In 2008, Facebook passed MySpace in worldwide traffic. By 2009, it overtook them in the United States too. MySpace's home turf, its last stronghold. The king had been dethroned. But the most embarrassing part of the story? It had not even hit rock bottom yet. Once the decline started, it was a freefall. In 2009, MySpace started laying off staff, hundreds of employees, then hundreds more, including huge cuts to its international teams. The leadership that built it was gone. Tom and Chris, the founders, departed. The company tried everything to stop the bleeding. They redesigned the site. They rebranded as a music and entertainment hub, trying to lean back into the one thing they were always best at. They pivoted and pivoted again. Nothing worked. Because by then, the audience had a new home, and nobody moves back into a house they have already left. Then came the final humiliation for Rupert Murdoch. The website he bought for $580 million in 2005. In June 2011, News Corp sold it. For how much? $35 million. That's not a typo. They lost over $500 million in value in 6 years. It's one of the worst acquisitions in the history of the internet. And one of the buyers attached to that deal was Justin Timberlake. Yes, that Justin Timberlake, who took an ownership stake and promised to make MySpace cool again. Spoiler, he could not make MySpace cool again. MySpace limped on as a music site, a shadow of itself, mostly forgotten. For most people, it became a memory. That cringy profile you made when you were 15. The top 8 friends list that started actual arguments. The song that autoplayed when someone opened your page. And then, in 2019, came the gut punch that turned the cringe into genuine grief. MySpace announced that during a server migration, it had lost every song, photo, and video uploaded to the site between 2003 and 2015. Around 50 million songs, 12 years of uploads, gone. Think about what that actually means. An entire era of music, demos from bands that never made it, first songs from artists who did. The raw, unfiltered sound of the early years of the 2000s internet. Much of it existed only on MySpace. And in an afternoon, it vanished. Historians and musicians called it one of the largest losses of digital cultural history ever. The company that was once the beating heart of music deleted the music. That's not just a company dying. That's a company forgetting it ever lived. So here's the question that haunts this whole story. How? How do you go from beating Google, from 100 million users, from being the most visited site on Earth, to a $35 million fire sale and a deleted hard drive? It comes down to one idea. MySpace stopped serving its users and started serving its quarterly numbers. Facebook obsessed over the product, speed, simplicity, the experience. MySpace, trapped inside a media giant and chained to a billion-dollar ad deal, obsessed over revenue this quarter. They cluttered the site to hit targets. They moved slowly because of bureaucracy. They assumed that being the biggest meant they would stay the biggest. And that's the part that should scare every company alive today. MySpace didn't lose because it was small, or poor, or unknown. It lost because it got comfortable. And a faster, cleaner, hungrier competitor was willing to do the boring, unglamorous work of just being better. There's a strange, almost poetic footnote to all this. Tom Anderson, everyone's first friend, walked away from MySpace, became a travel photographer, and reportedly lives a happy, quiet life, posting sunsets to a few million followers. The man whose face symbolized the rise and fall of MySpace might be the only person who truly won. Because being first isn't what matters. Being the biggest isn't what matters. Staying the best is what matters, and almost nobody does. MySpace was the giant that forgot why it was loved. But it's far from the only one. We have already covered Nokia and Blockbuster, companies that were untouchable right up until the moment they weren't. So here is a question for the comments. What is the next giant you think is about to fall the same way? Drop your pick below. Some of your answers might become the next video. And if you want to watch an empire collapse in real time, that Nokia story is right here on screen. Hit subscribe, because every week we autopsy another giant. I'm out. See you in the next downfall.